Hello, Akira here, and welcome back to the channel. Today's video is, well, it's not scripted, but it is, like, thought out. Is a character guide of No Redundancy FE7, which is a hack made by Deadesand that recently my playthrough of finished airing on my channel. So, what is No Redundancy? No Redundancy is a concept which has happened with both FE6 on Danny Doyle's channel, made by Crash Boom Bang, and also with FE7, as made by Deadesand, as mentioned previously, which is a format that fuses together units with quote-unquote redundant traits. I say that because how true this is varies, as we will see pretty shortly. This is a character guide, not a tier list. I do not personally believe in making tier lists for non-specific contexts, as I mentioned in my video on efficiency. So instead, this is based on what I and the hack creator, Deadesand, would recommend for people playing the hack for the first time. While we weren't able to schedule a time to do this call together, I do have his notes here, and we both organised everyone according to the tiers that you can see on your screen now, and then talked over any differences that we have in opinion. Still though, this is recommendations, your own mileage may vary, you're obviously very welcome to use whatever you want. In terms of the format of this list, this is based on Hector Hard Mode, which is the difficulty setting that I played No Redundancy FE7 on. So in terms of the tiers that you can see here, Team Staples once present kind of has two implications. One, when this unit arrives, there's very compelling reasons to use them, basically, to the point where both Deadesand and I think that very much you should be fielding them. Like with character guides generally, the once present part is important. Not all of these units are available for the majority of the game, but since this isn't a tier list, it means that we do not penalise as heavily as we would in that circumstance. Worth using / investing into, which was originally called Easy Deploys, and I've changed the name of that for literally the first unit that we're going to be evaluating. But basically, it's a unit who is either, like, very good at base, and, like, you should be fielding them for, like, a good chunk of the game, if not all of it, or, like, if you invest into them, they can snowball quite easily. Good minimal investment is, as it says. Okay units are, like, fine. Filler/filler utility speaks for itself. That might get merged into one of the other categories, because I don't think it's going to have very many people in it. And then, not really helped by fusion is, it's the lowest tier here, but it's not necessarily saying that the units are unusable. They are not. It's more saying that, because of the way that No Redundancy works, in this implementation, characters join at the earliest join time of the characters that are relevant, in addition to having the highest bases and stats of the fused together characters. It means that some units improve a lot. Other units do not really improve in any meaningful sense. I'll be covering the units in recruitment order, and units will not be ordered within character guide tiers. So if the ordering looks weird, that's why. It's because this isn't meant to be like a strict tiering format. You may also notice on this right hand side here that we have Discord open. So this is a Veil bot, which is the new form of Oifi to compare unit stats. Because No Redundancy FE7 works by largely giving people the best of everyone's stats and growths, we'll be looking at this quite extensively. Anyway, that's that, so let's get onto the list. So first of all is Helywood, who is the combination of Hector, Lyn, and Eliwood. I originally put Helywood in OK, and Deadesand put them into what was at the time called Easy Deploys, and that's why we had to rename this, because Helywood is a force deploy as the Lord, singular, which means that I personally find it difficult to call a unit like that an easy deploy if they're already forced on me, because I would not personally field this unit if I were not forced to bring them along to every map. But also, like, they're not a good minimal investment either, because even though, as you can kind of, like, see over here with Veil, you start off with decent stats all around, for the most part, except for, like, res, but that's because none of them have res at base, right? But, like, you start off with decent enough attack because of Hector, decent enough defense because of Hector, and decent enough skill and speed due to Lyn. But, like, the starting bulk is still not fantastic in and of itself, because something I did not actually fully appreciate until I started playing No Redundancy FE7 is that Hector's HP base is really bad. I did not realize that he had 19 HP at base. So, like, yes, because of the way that the growths work, Like, you clearly have, like, very good growths in, like, your defenses for HP and defense in terms of bulk, and then your speed and also your attack. Your starting bulk is not fantastic once you get past, like, the very early game where the enemies hit, like, wet noodles, which means that you do need to actually, like, invest into them a bit. So that's why, like, we kind of had that difference in opinion where I was like, well, they're okay if you use them, but I wouldn't call them, like, an easy deploy. Whereas Dedesands' point of view as well, they're being there anyway, they're easy to train, and so forth. Specifically, Dedesands' notes say here, Helywood gets bogged down by Hector's promotion time, but with 3 effective PRFs, consistent stats, and being force deployed means there are a lot of chances to use him, and if you're playing fast, it's not hard to make him good. Which I agree with, which is why we've changed the name of easy deploys into worth using / investing into. Helywood is able to use 3 effective PRFs in all of the Wolfbale, Repair, and Manikati. This is particularly helpful for the Wolfbale and Manikati, not least because No Dance FE7 has triple effectiveness. As I've kind of alluded to before, most of the stats you get, in terms of both your bases and your growths, come from Lyn and Hector. Eliwood doesn't really do much until promotion, at which point you have an armoured cav with cav movement due to Eliwood that has full melee access, because you get lances from Eliwood and bows from Lyn. But yeah, it takes a while to get there because you're held back by when Hector promotes. All of the Heaven Seals up until then are replaced with generic Earth / Master Seals. Helywood is very easy to train, for the most part, I'd say. Gets really wrecked by the Cog of Destiny Valkyries, but that's expected with 20 caps, to be honest, which also isn't really helped much on Pond promo because for some reason Helywood's promo still has Hector's speed cap, which is a bit sad. Still though, like a lord that requires like less babying, I'd say, and I'd still recommend training them because like they can actually do things. The Wolfbale and Manikati and the Repair to a lesser extent are all very good weapons. So next of all on this list, which is not in order in terms of the images, we have Letthew, who I put into good minimal investment and Dedesands would initially put into okay. So reading off Dedesands' notes here, Letthew hits very fast and hard at the start, but then falls off very hard. Not like you were going to use the Fell contract anyway, which was once removed since I didn't think anyone was going to use it. Yeah, I didn't actually end up going to the Sonya map because of I presume bug. I don't think that the Fell contract really does anything. Anyway, we kind of like agreed that he goes into good minimal investment, which is entirely for the thief utility. He has like actual offense against like non-armored enemies. Because like, yeah, 8 attack, 17 speed at base. It's pretty good. Yeah, you end up entirely taking Legault spaces. The growths don't really matter, to be honest. Because 1, Matthew's growths are not fantastic anyway outside of speed, and 2, you're already starting off at 17 speed, and as both Dedesands and I kind of said, I don't think that the promotion is very likely to happen, and I also don't think it's needed, because turns out that having 17 speed is enough to steal everything that you want or need him to at base, from like the red gem off the thief in chapter 11 to the Elysian whip on the pirate ship. It's true that he has not awful combat at the start, and especially that's the case during the game's Brigand phase, but I don't really think that plays much of a factor at all. It just means that, like, you have a mildly more survivable thief, which, like, it's nice, right? It's the same idea as Super Chad in FE6. You have a thief that can, like, vaguely survive something and has some combat to speak of, but, like, I don't think that Letthew is really affected in any meaningful way by Legault coming along and fusing into Matthew. Now we move on to Marwin, who is a mix of Marcus and Oswin, and he is our first team staple once present. Once again, reading off Dedesands' notes, Marwin is easy top tier throughout the game, even if his speed growth needs a bit of luck. Still, at base, he can do huge damage and soften opponents up. Like, you literally just end up with Marcus's bases and then like 3 extra points of defense. So like, he's very bulky, right? He starts as a Great Knight as well. It's just a cosmetic thing. He's still able to use all of the weapons that he would be able to normally. And yeah, 30% speed growth. That will require some luck if you want it to hold up throughout the game. So originally, I was actually lower on Marwin. I originally had him somewhere between, I think, good minimal investment and worth using / investing into, which is because, as I will get onto when we get onto those units, when units get fused together and you take the best of all of their stats and growths, turns out that your units on average are stronger. Still though, upon talking to Dedesands about this, I agreed with him that it should go up to Team Staples once present. There are few amounts to do things, and if anything, that actually means that his high paladin move is more impactful. So even if other people's combat is better, with some of their combat I think becoming markedly better quite quickly, there's always plenty for him to do between like rescue dropping, etc. And speaking of a unit that I think ends up with quite better combat quite quickly, is our next team staple, who is Kainwen, a mix of Kent, Sain, and Lowen. So you've got your Christmas cav and your third cav all rolled into one. Basically, it's Lowen's join time and bulk, but you get Sain's attack and Kent's speed, which to be fair, like, they're overall, like, not that different in terms of all the growths. And, like, their starting stats are it's not fantastic. Like, it's pretty, like, middling across the board. It's not enough to double most of the axe fighters on chapter 12, their join chapter, but it's still like pretty good. And like if you look at these growths, right, I would actually say they're like well-rounded to good, right? 60 attack, 40 defense, 45 speed, and also 90 HP. As mentioned, like we've looked at his bases, right? And I've already said that like he's not doubling people at base. So it does take him a few levels to get going, but I think that, like, you know, in this case you have literally one cav, right? Lowen himself is normally, like, rated quite highly, and in this case he's already gotten a few stat boosts, right? So, like, he's arguably the best investment of early experience, and he can start snowballing really early. And also, two of the other units that join in this chapter are not especially good compared to the rest of their peers. Speaking of them, the very first one is the combination of archers, getting rid of one of the earlier Etier Ulcris debates, is Wilbecca, who we both kind of firmly agree is not helped by fusion much at all, which is a bit unfortunate. So the reason why it's not very good is because neither of their stats are very good. If you look at these bases, you end up with an archer with 6 attack, 6 speed. Those are not fantastic stats. The growths are good growths, apart from defense, which also doesn't really matter because it's an archer. But, like, it's kind of difficult to justify giving them experience over other units, such as Kainwen, like I mentioned before. Reading off Dedesands' notes, Wilbecca, even with 3 times effectiveness, just can't do anything without nice level ups and lucky hits. Maybe the archer/sniper PRF helps her in the 12 chapters she can use it exclusively. Something I think is quite damning on, well, both of their parts, but I think especially Rebecca, because I've heard the refrain of, oh, but if they had 3 times effectiveness, then she'd actually be able to do something. With the starting iron bow and steel bow in their inventory, they still can't one-hit KO many early Pegasi. I think that's really sad. And that's all I think needs to be said about that. Then the other unit that also isn't really helped out much by fusion is Dortre, which Dedesands' notes say, Dortre's PRF is funny, but not worth it, unfortunate. For the context for that, this unit we can see here, it's Cathar, who I'll come on to much later because I think that they're literally the last unit to join in the game, is a mix of Jafar and Karla, and therefore joins at Jafar's join time. That means that, obviously, in battle preparations, you can't recruit Karla, so instead what Dedesands did was replaced that event with an event where if he's at level 5 warrior and you bring him along, he can talk to Natalie above the arena, and he can get a personal bow. This personal bow gives him like really high stat boosts. It makes the Uber Spear stat boosts from Vida look like much smaller, and it means that he can basically solo both parts of the endgame, including the dragon, as you might be able to see from this here with his bases. The bases is still not good. His speed especially is still not good. And even like when you look at Bartre's like 40% growth on top of the 6 base that Dorcas has, it's still pretty not great, I'd say. And also, as mentioned previously, some units have become much better, which in both our opinions makes it difficult to justify giving him the first hero crest instead of another unit that we'll be getting onto relatively shortly. The last unit who joins during chapter 12 is someone who actually does benefit from fusion, thankfully, which is kind of nice, because talking negatively about Wilbecca and Dortre is a bit sad, but they're the saddest moments we'll have to talk about, really. And that unit is Priserra, who is a mixture of Priscilla and Serra, and we both think goes quite firmly into worth using / investing into. Delisand's notes say, Priserra has basically no healing competition, so she's an easy deploy and gets experience easily. Consistent stats helps with that. So, there's no point in me searching up her stats, because, like, as is said, she has no healing competition. You don't have another healer that can move properly joining for a good while. So you've got your primary staff for most of the game here, and then eventually she can be your secondary warper / rescuer. And yeah, also has rescue utility proper. Like, she is Serra's join time, but she's on a haunts. Good unit. Now, we're gonna get on to who we both think is very much the best user of the first hero crest, which is Darvey, who we both thought goes into team staples once present. So, Darvey, if you're wondering about the name, it's a mix of Dart, the pirate, Raven, the mercenary, and Guy / Guy. You end up with some pretty, disgustingly high bases really early on. 34 HP, 12 attack, 15 speed, 6 defense, with the ability to use 1-2 range at base. It makes him pretty difficult to actually approach, so I think what I ended up having to do in my run was I had to wait for Guy's group to actually start moving towards me, so that Letthew could, like, talk to him without having to, like, risk getting hit by a hand axe hit, which would have hurt quite a lot if it actually connected. And yeah, so, like, really high bases in addition to, like, really high HP, attack, and speed growths. The defensive growths are worse, obviously, and the defensive base is not great, but, like, the really high HP helps a lot. So, as Delisand said, Darvey is the best infantry unit by a long shot IMO, joining with 1-2 range, high crit, high everything, custom promo with crit boost, might struggle with move and defenses at times, but high HP anyway, which I think is a good summary. Also, yeah, when it says custom promo with crit boost, that's because his promotion, Sword Zerka, also has crit boost. And yeah, he's, like we said, struggles slightly with move and defenses, but that's one of the things that, like, people can be around to, like, help airlift with, like Marwin, for instance, and yeah, really, really strong combat, like, amazingly dominant combat, just much better than Dortre in every single way. So, I would say that Darvey is definitely a big part of the reason why Dortre suffers a lot in this version of FE7. Now, a combination of Erk and Nino, everyone's favorite est. So, as you can see here, right, if Nino were to join at Erk's join time, which is basically what happens in Neuroduncy FE7 because she has higher bases and everything apart from Con, you know, it's obviously a better unit, but the problem with Erno is that, as we've kind of already seen with, like, Kainwen and also Darvey, the physical units have gotten a really huge buff. Magic really does not do that well compared to how it does generally, which I already do not think it does that well in like vanilla FE7 already. So Erno is our first member of the OK tier. Reading through the notes, Erno doesn't deserve this. Finally a chance at being good, and still outclassed by Penault. This guy, we'll get onto later, combination of Pent and Renault. While early game magic tends to hit hard, physical attackers just hit harder now. Get some use out of early game damage though, could go up. Yeah, the physical units just got much better. Low level mage is just not very action economy efficient to get levels on because of that still, like, not great bolt. Full defense, 19 HP, it's not really surviving multiple hits. FE7 is still a very enemy phase focused game. Next unit that we have on this list is Fiorina, right here, who is a mix of Florina and it's Florina's join time of Noble Lady of Kainwen, but it's basically Fiora's bases. Okay, there we go. Florina has +2 luck. That's the contribution here. 8 attack, 13 speed. It's pretty good. And then if we look at the growths, we've got 40% attack, which is not stellar. But we do have, like, the good speed growth that you'd expect of Pegasus, right? And, like, not fantastic, like, bulk growths outside of res, which is like, whatever. Still though, early flyer continues to be good, with the added bonus of not having Florina's bases. She was a very helpful combat unit for a good chunk of my run, and then she eventually transitioned into rescue drop support once other units started doing more damage. You know, it's still a very valuable, strong role, right? Like, flight is incredibly strong as a tool. Delisand's notes say, Fiorina's strength growth makes her a little inconsistent compared to Thief, who is, once again, a unit that we'll get into later, and is a combination of Heath and Florina, but she can snowball once she gets going. Once again, we have another mage. The next mage that we're talking about is Lucinas, who is a combination of Lucius and Canas, who once again goes into our OK tier. I don't really think we need to touch with growths because I think that this statement from Delisand sums up quite nicely. Lucinas gets Epic Nosferatu and Luna, and Canas plus Lucius would usually be good. Unfortunately, physical attackers go burr, and now he's sort of middling, sadly. So the unit I missed out, that I'm now returning to, is another team staple. It's Merlithos. In terms of the creator's notes, we have Merlithos is mostly here for the memes, but he is free deploy that acts as unkillable bait anyway. Best magic unit, duh. Merlithos, as you might be able to guess from the name, is a combination of Merlinus and Athos. If your question is, how the heck are these two units redundant? They're not. As Delisand has thankfully admitted here, Merlithos is mostly here for the memes. It's a very funny meme though. He starts with capped 20s in like all of his stats as the tent, which means that you have a literally unkillable great bait unit that can just stand there and get a free level every single map. Deploying him is like literally like a team staple once present moment because he's just free convoy convenience, doesn't even take up a deployment slot. And then like eventually he starts actually moving because it's very easy to get him to survive each map. Something that I didn't realize actually until he did promote is that he has weapon ranks. He has capped weapon ranks in like all the different magic types, including staves. And you even get given a bolting tome at the start of 14. I'm not sure this still applies if you don't do 13x. But I did do 13x, and I got given a bolting tome at the start of 14. And he can use that at base, which means that even when he's standing completely still, he can still contribute to combat. I didn't realise that he could do this until like he actually promoted. But once he gets onto his wheels, his combat's still pretty good. Athos does not have growths. And I'm pretty sure that Merlinus also does not have growths. Apart from speed and luck, yeah. Merlithos will not like continue to gain stats on each level. So you're not going to have like you're not going to have like your 30 attack Archsage. Like that's just not happening. But here's the thing. Merlinus has 25 con. Turns out that when you have 25 con, you don't get weighed down by anything. Which, because FE7 enemies are so slow, means that once he gains wheels, he can double like everyone mobile with really heavy tomes. In the finale, I had him double people with Gespenst, which is the S rank Dark Tome, and even if his magic attack itself is not that high, because he's able to use all tomes, and Luna in FE7 is terribly designed, and therefore very funny when it comes to killing things, it means that he's a very good magical combat and utility unit as well, because of the S-rank staves. In the same way to how, like, Darvey has had this knock-on effect in the character guide on like how Dortre performs. Even without like the competition element of guiding rings, Merlithos being able to be like your no-effort magical killer means that both Erno and Lucinas can't really be much more than okay. Not to say that like Merlithos is a perfect unit, I would say that not being able to move at all for your first 15 maps is quite the noticeable unit flaw. It's just more that it takes such a long time for Warp to enter the field in this game anyway. That's why, like, Pent in vanilla FE7 gets credited as highly as he does, even though that's not always warranted. And, like, the same thing applies here with Merlithos as well. Now, moving back to the actual order, we get to jump ahead a bit now, because it turns out there's a while before more units join, and we get here with Nilsian in Team Staples because Dancer. As Delisand has said, Nilsian is a refresher. Just deploy them. Easy. I actually did not deploy them on all maps, just because, like, there are some maps where, like, they're just really squishy. Because, like, Nilsian hasn't changed at all from vanilla, because Nils and Ninian share the same stats, share the same inventory, share the same everything. This is literally, like, they were already playing no redundancy. And, like, there are some maps where, like, their frailty really does make them a liability, because you're moving through the map, you can be moving through the map faster, and it can be hard to keep them out of danger, but it does just boil down to Dancer good, rescue drop to use them. We have another member of the OK tier with Izarath, who, for some reason, like Helywood, has like a different background colour when I downloaded it off of FE Builder. I don't know why. Desan says, Isarath would do great in vanilla FE7, I'm sure. Unfortunately, her niche in bows fails to separate her from the competition of Marwin, up here, insane, and Kainwen, also insane. Maybe worth using if you wanted a bow user. Which I would agree with. So, we originally were split over this. I think I had her in good minimal investment, and he had her in filler, so that's why we've got her in the in-between tier of okay. Something that is kind of sad is that usually with no redundancy you take the better of everyone's stats, which would include the aid. Wrath is male, which means that we have the sexist aid formula, and unfortunately, in this case, we get Isadora's aid, which is a bit unfortunate. It doesn't really change very much, to be honest. It's just a bit sad. It's just a bit sad. Like, I had her in good minimal investment because, like, I figured that, like, she can use a bunch of bows for free. You're not really using most of the other bow users, really. So it's fine, but I think that okay is a perfectly fine tier. On the same map, we also have the potential joiner of Thief, who I mentioned before, in the context of Fiorina. I thought that Thief goes into worth in using / investing into, but Desan's convinced me that they count as a team staple, based on the argument that Thief has very good bases, especially with hard mode bonuses. I'm not sure if that's going to be reflected when I actually search. Okay, assuming these are accurate, right? You end up with 13 attack, 14 speed, 11 defense, and 12 res on a unit with 32 HP. Which means that he just has like really, really good all-round stats, to be honest. And in terms of like how the growths go as well, like, even though 30% res is not fantastic, firstly, res, Lamau, but also 12 res is, like, really high as a base to have. Decent enough speed growth considering the amount of stuff that you have. Also, wow, their growths are astonishingly similar. I did not know that. You end up getting a few levels on them anyway before promotion, and, like, you can pretty much instantly promote them. And they've ended up with, like, really good stats in all areas. Fiorina can fall into this issue where, because the strength growth is still worse than Heath's, you can end up with kind of shaky performance. That doesn't happen with Thief. Thief is RNG proof and still joins at a lower level where like you will probably end up getting more attack on him before they promote. And also, for some reason, unlike Isarath, Thief has the male aid formula, which is, you know, good for him for if you want to have the additional stuff of rescue dropping utility. So I think very much like a team staple, probably combat wise, but also like utility wise, there's like a lot of stuff they can do. Which brings us on to our next flyer, who is Vidai, who is a mix of Vida and Hawkeye. Vidai is a weird one because still joins at Hawkeye's normal time. So you've got this like Wyvern Lord, which has the crit bonus with a 22 attack, 14 speed, 22 defense, and 10 res, and also 50 HP. It's a lot of bulk. It's a lot of bulk. The growths don't really matter because the bases are just so cracked. Vidai was the recipient of my boots, and the fusion makes them like very good as an allied unit, and also means that when you fight Vidai in Unfulfilled Heart, who is white for some reason, they're even worse to fight because they have slightly more bulk, courtesy of Hawkeye, and they also have the crit bonus, courtesy of Hawkeye, in addition to still holding onto the Uber Spear. Yeah, it's quite something. I save stated in order to beat them, but I think that's just kind of like proof of like how threatening Vidai is on like to everyone. As Desantis said, Vidai just deletes opponents. I would say Thief and Vidai have potential to be top, depending on how you want to consider availability. I think if you're not considering availability like at all, like there is a very like strong argument to be made that like if we were doing this in like traditional tier listing format, you could actually make the case that Vidai just straight up goes into S tier, and I don't think that like there would really be an argument for that if we discount availability entirely like that. But this is a character guide, so we're not doing that, but it also means we get to sidestep the issue entirely. This brings us to another unit that we have that once again Dazsans and I disagreed on, similar to Isarath, which is Waltz, who is a combination of Wallace and Geats, the form of my new sleep paralysis demon. And after this, he should also be the form of your sleep paralysis demon. In all seriousness though, you end up with like a general, right, who has infantry, like promoted infantry move, and like he's fine. I had him in filler utility, and Desand had him in good minimal investment on the grounds that Walt is another infantry with nice bulk. Good filler if somehow everyone else useful died. Unless you get the super defense version, then you would just get a walking, attacking, semi-functional light rune. So the super defense version apparently is the version of him that you get if you end up going to Linus's version of Four-Fanged Offense, which I did not do, because like I did not get Helywood to level 20 unpromoted before then. But if you do, you go there, and apparently his defense is higher there, and it makes him like basically unkillable. They would probably just be that anyway. In my playthrough of Four-Fanged Offense, he got very close to dying, so I was not particularly impressed. But it is true though that a 44 HP, 19 defense unit, who apparently has even more defense on the other version of Four-Fanged Offense, would be quite difficult to kill. But yeah, I agreed that like if we were doing an Iron Man of this, then probably like Waltz could be useful if everyone kept on dying, though concession, he's an okay. And now we've got, I think, our last team staple here in Penult, who, as I mentioned previously, when we were talking about Erno over here, is the combination of Pent and Renault. Renault being that guy that you probably don't remember because he literally joins on victory or death, and you can also miss him entirely. Renault actually brings like quite a few things to this fusion. What he brings is a significant amount of bulk. He brings 10 HP, 2 res, whatever, but 4 defense is an actual stat to be giving, in addition to 1 extra point of con for offsetting weapon weight, as well as 3 more speed, so he functionally adds a whole doubling threshold to Pent's capabilities. No complaints. Once he joins, he's really good. As Dedesans has said, Penult is just base Pent with more bulk, letting him stick around more. I feel he gets power crept by the beasts of physical attackers around, but easy to slot in and still packs a punch. I know I've said this a lot already, but we really cannot overstate just how good a lot of the physical units have gotten. Like, if we're looking at who we've got here, he now has even more res, right? Lowen is now like around and has like solid growths in all areas as opposed to middling growths in all areas. Darvey still has really cracked bases and also cracked growths. We now have Hawkeye, who flies and also has better offensive bases as well. The physical units in this version of FE7 have gotten a lot stronger. Penult still joins at the point in time before Warp does, so like he's your easy primary warper if you don't have Merlithos to do it by the time that stuff rolls around. Okay, so here's like the one unit that hasn't gotten fused. It's Louise, or as she's called in the game's text, Lamauise. Okay, I had her in okay. Desand had her in filler, like filler utility. And I think that I agree that she's filler utility, because like I basically just used her around as a support bot for Penult. Apparently, she still has her supports of other people. Desand says, Lamauise is very sad, that's it. Her only changes are her supports with Erno, Kainwen, Wilbecca, Darvey, and Thief. Grow twice as fast. Hopefully patch 1 makes her slightly cooler with a brave PRF. But yeah, I just used her as a support bot for Penult. Which means that like, although I had her in okay, what she's doing is she's being filler. But this tier is going to literally just be her. So actually I think that we're just going to... I mean, accurate. She's not being helped by fusion, but I still feel like she's... Like, her base is... Like, Louise's stats remain fine. So I think we're going to put her into okay, we're just going to go with the tier. I wonder if the PRF would change anything. I mean, it wouldn't. Because being bow-locked is not fantastic. But what can you do? Now we move on to... Well, okay, I mean, I've already kind of made it clear, like, that these guys are not filler/filler utility. I think it's fairly unsurprising to see that both Karkan here and also Karfar go into good minimal investment. In terms of Karkan here, that's a mixture of Corel and Harken. It doesn't matter what you end up doing in Pale Flower of Darkness in terms of killing promoted enemies or unlocking doors. You'll always end up getting Karkan appearing as an enemy who you are able to recruit. In vanilla, what ends up happening is that Harken joins and is probably better than your trained up Raven. This is not the same situation because, as we've already mentioned, Darvey starts off with really cracked stats, continues to have really good growths, and also statistically probably surpasses their stats. You have a 23 attack, 42 HP, 20 speed, and 16 defense is still really good. You can't complain about that, right? Darvey is probably getting the levels needed to promote, during which he's probably catching up in a lot of those stats. Upon promotion, he's probably still getting several more levels. So, Delisans has said here that Karkan kind of ends up being Darvey light, since now Darvey can and will surpass him most of the time, which is true. Still though, as I've said, this is a unit that has a crit bonus as a result of the class from Corell's Swordmaster, and has free 1-2 range from Harkin in hand axes that you don't have to train. Good minimal investment is exactly what that falls under. And then last of all, we have Karthar, who is a mix of Karla and Jafar, who joined like absolutely at the latest during Battle Before Dawn. If you don't actually talk to Karthar with Erno on the map, the guidance chapter where you can fight Sonya will not work. As we kind of saw in my attempt of the map, it just didn't work. Caused a whole bug. Thankfully, GBA remembers that where you finished your action, so I reloaded, just said no to the guidance, and my game did not crash, so I didn't have to play it all from the beginning, thank goodness. But that's part of why, like Letthew did not promote. We end up with, oh god, Carla's so bad. Yeah, you literally just have Jafar's stats, and Carla doesn't even bring along an additional weapon type, because Swordmaster Lamau. She does bring along the crit bonus at least, so that increases the chance of lethality / silencer proccing. Delisans' commentary here says, Karthar with super high crit is very funny, double lethality chance, but still sword locked and low tier locked. RIP. Good enough filler. Because, like, the stats of Jafar are still very good. If we were doing this in terms of like tier ordering, Karthar would definitely be towards the bottom of good minimal investment, if not like the top of okay. Because late joining, and now like a much higher proportion of your units have good 1-2 range. But yeah, that has been the No Duncy FE7 character guide. Hopefully you enjoyed. I guess this is just kind of like a closer look at maybe like how I evaluate units, because I don't plan on doing a tier list for like non-specific context. I might eventually do another character guide. Oh, that's cute. Delisans' commentary has like a note at the end. Good luck on the video, and I hope you play my FEH No Duncy when I finally release it in 2050, after 27 years of deliberation. Instead of the others, that'll be better and quicker than mine. No, don't put yourself down! FE7 is not a game I like. I've been quite open about that. If you look at my FE9 review, you see that I'm very low on FE7. I enjoyed this like a lot more, I think. Like, it gave me something to look forward to, so thanks Delisans for making the hack. No Duncy FE7, if you're interested, you can find the link for it in the description. I would also recommend checking out No Duncy FE6. Danny, I know, had a lot of fun with it. Still though, that will be it for this video. I don't have my script here for like my standard closer, but if you liked it, then please consider letting me know, whether it's through liking the video, commenting on it, or subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. There's also a community Discord server, which you can join in the description if you want to talk more about like these units, for instance, or if you just want to like talk about Fire Emblem in general. I'd love to talk to you all more. Character guides, I'm happy to make. Tier lists, I am not for non-specific context. So like, if you do want to like see more of my thoughts on like character guides, please let me know, because that's probably the only way that I will actually end up making character guides or like my thoughts on units from XYZ mainline game that isn't a hack. But yeah, thank you very much for watching. Hope to see you next time. Until then, have a good one.